Elliot, what did we just do? Did we just team up to not solve a murder? Is that what happened to us?
I think that's what happened. A lot of complex feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of things we got right that we kind of talked about through the last 7 weeks, things that we did not anticipate happening, and here we are talking about it. This is our therapy session.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I feel like we've been the Homer and Plum of this podcast, trying to figure things out together. Yeah. There's so much to talk about from this episode.
So much.
And we're going to get into every little aspect because I have a feeling people are going to have big opinions about how this show has ended.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So welcome, everybody. DTF St. Louis, the Unofficial After Show. This will be our last episode. Unless they make another one, who knows?
Yeah, it'll be the anthology series. More people in suburban neighborhoods see what's behind the closed doors, all the people's weird kinks, as they say at the end there.
DTF Cincinnati or something,
just around
something
around
like
the
that.
Yeah.
I have to ask you.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the ending and all of the ending and the meanings behind the ending. Yeah. But how are you feeling with how this ended?
I feel similarly to Clark, where my feelings are, it's not a straight line. I'm kind of like, there's parts it kept the tone and the personality that it has been for the last 6 weeks, but it leaned more into it is a dark comedy drama. It leaned way more into the dark than I was anticipating. We all knew at the beginning of the show that someone dies, but obviously we were trying to figure out how he died and the way that unfolded and how all the pieces of the puzzle came together. I'm still, as I watched it last night, rewatched it before we record this, I still have complicated emotions and feelings about if, number one, the show stuck the landing from what it was trying to tell narratively, and if I'm satisfied with how it stuck the landing. Because, again, we knew how it was going to end, but how we got there was so interesting, and I don't know if it fully came together.
I want to hear more about your thoughts on that. I was looking back at my notes, and a lot of them are in all caps. I feel like at first my reaction was just sort of dissatisfied feeling.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people on the internet. I've been deep in the subreddits. People have wanted there to be some large reveal, a long con, something that kind of would be like satisfying.
Carol and Modern Love are brothers and her husband is all these. Yeah, it was a rabbit hole that people were digging in for weeks.
All the theories. And to know that at the end of the day, it was just Floyd himself. And I have some questions about whether it was totally intentional or impulsive in that moment, or even still to some degree potentially accidental. But either way, it wasn't this big reveal, whodunit, suspect arrested. In fact, it ends so much. But then as I thought more about it, my feelings about it have almost become more complex. And I'm finding that I'm thinking about it, chewing on it a lot more on what the show actually means, what we're supposed to take away from it.
Right. Which, I mean, as we'll talk about at the end, to me, those are typically good signs when you have a show, movie, story in general that has you talking, that has you thinking, that has you... Because there's a lot of stuff we consume, because there's so much stuff that's on streaming and in theaters that you just kind of goes in one ear and out the other, you just move on to the next thing. But then it's kind of rare in today's saturated market where you get a show that does make you, as we talked about, we're thinking about it hours. I literally slept on it, and I'm still thinking about it, and I'm sure I will be thinking about it as the days go by. So that is, normally for me, something that encourages me as someone that consumes so much, that there is a story like this that does stick with you and doesn't just, you just brush it off.
Yeah, because otherwise you move on. You move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
What did you think about the structure of the episode before we get into the different scenes? What did you think about the structure of this one as the finale?
So if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the longest as far as runtime for the episodes go, and you felt that way. Like, I felt like this was a chunky, meaty episode because we did have to kind of close off certain chapters. We kind of get more information about what happened to Floyd with his situation. Also, we learn a lot more about Carol that kind of restructures or kind of puts her in a different light, where we see her as a person that was caring, because she was so almost distant and so almost like isolated and almost cold for most of the season. But she's actually someone that has a heart, caring mom that cares about her family. So I thought structurally wise, it felt the same as other 6 episodes, but again, the tone of it was one of the things that kind of not took me off guard, but the tone was just so dark that it was kind of like, kind of shake off that darkness that it gives you at the end. But I think structurally it fit with the runtime. It gave you enough to kind of make you stay engaged and keep you on the edge of your seat wondering how it all is going to wrap up.
Yeah, I feel like we still learned a lot through it, these revelations that came through it. And I know you were talking about Carol here.
Yes.
Stephen Queese has become one of my favorite characters. We suddenly get so much more of him, and we learn so much more about Carol through Queese, and he's giving her the Umpire of the Year award. I want to take just a quick moment to play a scene when he's talking to the detectives about that.
And when I award someone the award for Umpire of the Year, it's on the basis of how that umpire takes care of the kids.
Ball 4. Take your base.
And Carol fudged a lot for the kids who struggled.
Strike 3. Batter out.
And most of the time, if you struck out, she'd send you out with a pat on the back.
You get him next time. Chin up, Ramirez.
So again, I think this is sort of, Queese kind of gives us he kind of peels the layer back of her. We've thought she kind of hated the umpire job and maybe was not good at it at all.
Yeah.
He's saying quite the opposite. In fact, she was very good at it because she cared.
Yeah. First off, shout out to Steven, 15 years old, president of the Umpire Association and other little knickknacks and side hustles. So Paperboy, I respect young people that are always on the grind and hustle. But yeah, that was a very interesting scene because number one, we've only really spent like little tidbits with this character, and to have him have this moment to give us a big revelation that Carol isn't that kind of cold, calculate, because for weeks we were like, oh, Carol set this up. She's working, again, the whole modern love theory that was floating online. But at the end of the day, she was just a person that cared not only for her son, but for the youth. She was so nice to the kids with the, ball 4, walk to their base, or, all the different bending the rules and learning about the sport, because it was something I think at the end of the day that kind of gave her a moment to, almost like we saw with Floyd and Clark, a moment to kind of step out of her normal day life and be there for someone else and be there for these young kids and do something that is out of the box for her. And it was something that brought her joy, even though, again, like you mentioned, it almost seemed like she hated it. And it was just like, I'm just doing this to support my family. I don't want to be here, but I have to. But it was something that I think kind of gave her a moment to have fun and to embrace kind of a different side of herself.
And I should say Queese is a paper person. He made it clear that he's a paper person. But yeah, I think we see and we learn, of course, through the detectives that Carol, her past conviction was not something
deep or
nefarious
dark or
at all. In fact, it's quite sad in some ways to know that a 12-year-old was arrested for shoplifting explicitly to take care of her family. She needed toilet paper, a basic need.
So simple, yeah.
We suddenly sympathize with her so much in that moment.
Yeah.
And know that she will do anything to take care of her family except kill. We know that she wouldn't do that.
Yeah. I can't remember the episode 3 or 4 when she brought up the Richard, I would do anything to protect my son. And it was an episode, too. I think it was the beginning of that episode that showed the other side of her when we saw that she was constantly, again, taking the umpire job and doing what she could to protect and also support her family financially. And you could understand why she was kind of upset with Floyd when he didn't take the job, especially in this episode. We found out that she spent a year making note cards and doing all this stuff, encouraging him, and for him to come home to do something that is, nice to be a part of helping others out. But it was like, I just helped you for a whole year, and you know how much we're struggling. So yeah, this episode definitely gave us a much more of a deeper understanding, sympathize with the character, and you can so understand why she was so, mean isn't the word, but just, again, distant and cold to Floyd throughout the season, because if you were in that position, you would probably be upset with your significant other if they're not going the extra lengths that you are to support your family.
And obviously we watch all things through our own lenses. Yeah. I'm a mom, and so I've been craving somewhat more of that caringness from nature. Carol.
Yeah.
And there's the scene where Richard is riding the bike for the first time, and he's so excited. He's so jazzed to ride that bike to school for the first day. And she's saying some things to him that maybe are not, again, complex because, she wants to try to protect him as a mom. Yeah. And she doesn't want him to be made fun of in this new school with the nerd bike, as she says it's, not cool.
It's not that cool.
It's not a cool bike. But she ultimately does kind of support him and lets it go. When he comes back riding down the street.
On her face. Yeah.
Oh, I have to say, I cried a little bit because it was just pure joy for both Richard and Carol in that moment to say, we've had a win. We have a win here. He's doing better.
Yeah. On top of the fact, I don't have kids, but I always just appreciate when people, I have a mom, that relationship you have with your parents, and it's just like that joy on her face and Richard's face when he goes home and sees the furniture. Then again, the show always has these kind of weird moments. She's dancing and singing in the kitchen about getting this stuff for her family, and again, that joy that she had to bring someone else that she cares for joy meant so much to her. So yeah, the emotional moments like that really stood out to me because again, it kind of restructures your idea of what you thought of this person. But at the end of the day, she was just someone, again, loved her son, loved her family, and she just wanted to bring joy to the person in her life.
I'm so glad that Linda Cardellini got her own musical moment. I think
she was the only one that didn't, right?
Yeah, and that was really great. And I think she carried that off really well. Again, I think you can just sense that joy that she's worked hard for that moment to get him the grown-up furniture and the new bedding.
3-4 games a weekend, like that's not easy. Those are like 2-hour games. So yeah.
Yeah, and we of course learned a lot about Richard because again, we were pulling for him. We're seeing these moments where he's sort of coming out of his shell and really connecting with Floyd. And he's had this great moment with the bike, and then something shifts, of course. And we see that a little bit in a conversation with Clark and Floyd because we finally learn what happened that caused the Peyronie's disease, which we've learned a lot about on this show.
Yes.
Thank you to our urologist who explained that to us, but we've been kind of, in a way, like wondering what happened. It's been a very comedic moment. We find out that Richard actually is the one who caused it.
Yeah. He was younger. I don't remember the age, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Earlier that day, it was the continuation of when Floyd didn't take the financial job and came home to tell Carol the news, and there was an argument. Richard saw the argument, and he felt kind of almost in the reverse of how she protects her son. He wanted to protect his mom at such a young age. He saw his mom was upset because what did Floyd say? That if you're going to marry me, we're going to always struggle. And I mean, that's nothing you want to hear from any father figure or someone that you look up to. And he went into his room that night and hit him with a baseball bat, which and hearing Floyd retell that story, and even again Floyd showing his sympathy, like, I felt bad for the kid. He wasn't upset. I mean, I'm sure he was upset in the moment, but at the end of the day, the end result was this was a defining moment for the family where the dynamic changed. Obviously their intimate life kind of came to an end. There was a little bit of rebuilding, probably some trust with Floyd and Richard once he kind of had that moment, and it took a while for them to get on the same page. And then, unfortunately, as we'll talk about later, he kind of broke that. At least he thought he broke that trust again.
And actually, you brought it up, so I want to play how Floyd kind of tells that moment and how he characterizes it. So let's listen to that real quick.
Poor kid. I feel so bad for him. I made his mom cry. He was so young, he didn't know what was going on. I made his mom cry. He just, I don't know. I just love that kid so much.
I mean, you've kind of summed this up, but here was another moment where Floyd was thinking about someone else other than himself. You would think, wow, something traumatic happened to me.
Yeah.
He's so empathetic to Richard, and that just really struck me.
The modern love interaction that we saw earlier this season, the idea that he wanted his wife to have an affair for she could be happy. A kid hits you in a very vulnerable position in the middle of the night. That is something I think would probably break up a family or someone in that position might not want to be as close and continuing to rebuild that relationship. It just goes to show you how far Floyd is willing to go to make sure that people are not feeling uncomfortable, don't feel bad for something they've done to him or someone else. So yeah, him describe, and it's a moment we've been waiting for, and it was, I guess I'll ask you, did you feel that the reveal was worth the build up to that was worth the
I do. Yeah. I think it was worth it. Again, we got our comedy moments out of it already, and I just liked how they kind of kept that thread going throughout. But it kind of, again, it was kind of shocking to be like, oh, well, this is where Richard really is. This is, how delicate his situation is as a kid with this mental health diagnosis that they have talked about previously. It's very, very serious. It kind of complicates my feelings in the end even more then. I think in the middle of it, you kind of wonder still, did Richard actually do it on purpose?
Yeah.
For that reason, because now there is some tend towards violence.
Yeah.
So it just really complicated it, which also made me feel like, yes, that was worth the wait.
I have to agree because it is, as you just mentioned, it was kind of played as a comedic beat, the car, the umbrella, all the build up to the story. because it is important to the story, because we find out that it was a triggering point for Richard. Again, it was an emotional reaction to, if you hurt my mom, well, I'm going to hurt you back. I'm going to defend my mom. And ultimately, as we'll talk about later, same thing sort of happened where he thought that Floyd was cheating on his mother. He responded by going there, and probably if he was face-to-face, maybe it would have gotten physical again. But at the end of the day, this was the root of the fraction in the family, the distrust to a certain extent for Floyd and Richard to kind of rebuild their relationship. So it was, again, played as a joke, but it was something that was pretty critical to the end result of what we see in the end of the show.
So I'm going to switch over to Clark and Floyd because we already know Tiger's been nixed. We know that. So Floyd is well aware of what Clark has tried to do. They have a moment where they meet up to do paintball, which I thought was kind of, maybe again a moment of commentary on masculinity.
Right. Let's shoot some things.
Shoot each other, literally, with paintballs. And they decide not to. They decide to just sit in the forest and talk. Yeah. And again, I've always wondered throughout the show a little bit more about Clark's motivations. Mm-hmm. And he has a moment here that I think is noteworthy to take a listen to about maybe what's motivating him.
I've mattered to them for 12 straight years, and I don't know. I want to matter to someone else also, I guess.
It's middle-aged talking.
It's funny because Floyd had said, well, you matter to Emmy and to your girls. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then Clark says, well, I want to matter to someone else.
Yeah.
And I just found that very interesting. What did you make of, what is Clark really thinking when he embarks on this summer journey that they talk about?
So this is one of the themes that we've seen throughout this season is the idea of not having enough and having almost too much and not knowing what to do with either one of those feelings. We see Clark, both characters seem to have, I think the episode title is, everyone seems normal across the street. And the idea that you would think of Clark, weatherman, almost a mini celebrity in this area in St. Louis, and wife who's working with charity and 2 kids that seem to be healthy, a beautiful home and a great life. But it's never enough. His cup is never fulfilled. He wants to try new things. He wants to fulfill his fantasies and his dreams that we saw throughout the season. So to get to the root of that, to hear him physically say that, I just want more. I want to experience love from another person, from another experience, kind of almost reverses in the Carol spot, because we've always, Jason Bateman is a great actor, and we all kind of just inherently just like him as a person on screen. But now, hear him say that kind of makes him really, it does make him selfish for him to say that, because it's disrupting everyone's life now that he wants to go out and have this affair, and how it broke up a family. His best friend ended up dead because of this. So it makes you look at him as kind of I don't want to say villain, but kind of the big bad of the show, because of his kind of inherent nature to want more and to be selfish and to betray his family and all the stuff that kind of was a domino effect of him wanting more.
I think that's so interesting on all of that, what you said there, because I think I think that's a human nature thing to struggle with the balance of that, our own, desires and our own what we wish for ourselves, but knowing that we always interact with and impact those around us. I really think that is kind of getting at maybe what some of the messages are, but I just why wouldn't Clark think that through, though? It's almost like he even if some of his intentions are good with Floyd to try to help him, he doesn't think through the consequences and the ramifications of everything he's doing. Everything
so far that we've seen him do that he thinks is, as you just mentioned, a good thing. Oh, I'm helping my friend out by having him interact with a complete stranger off of the street that I met in Denny's, that was going to go well. Mm-hmm. Oh, and as we'll talk about, let me be that thing that my friend thinks he's missing, and it ended up being the thing that pushed Floyd over the edge and have him do what he did at the end of this episode. So it is one of the things where I think he thinks he's doing the right thing in his own kind of selfish, twisted way, but as we just said, it ended up hurting someone else and many others in the process. Which leads us to, this elongated scene together in the Kevin Kline's pool. Yeah. It is the 2 of them. Yes. And it's
I've not seen anything quite like this on TV. I think we've gotten at this idea of, are they gay? Are they both gay? Are they struggling with their sexualities to some degree? And so you're kind of watching very intently to see, are they going to make good on that, or what's really going on here? Break that down for me. I mean, what was really going on for these two guys?
I mean, this whole season, the idea of, number one, Floyd watching another man, regardless of the relationship, being intimate with his wife, and then the reverse of that Clark was okay with watching his friend be intimate with his wife, and it was almost like they were just one step away from just, why don't you guys just see where this goes on a more physical level? And as we knew from last week, Floyd pretty much said that he's at the point of his life where it's like, no matter it's a man or female, however you want to slice it up, he was just looking for a connection, not only just from a point of just a human connection, but also a physical connection, because he hasn't been intimate with his wife in such a long time. So we already knew that Floyd was open to the idea of exploring another gender. And kind of throughout the season, we've seen that with Clark as well. I think about the swing set scene, and he alluded to it, he confirmed this week that it is the wife, that I found her attractive, but also the husband. He's kind of the person I find to be attractive, and what he looks like and all that stuff. So it's always been there, but now to see these two in this scene complimenting each other, slowly taking their clothes off. It's a comedic scene, but it's an intimate scene as well.
It is.
Two people being very vulnerable, talking about their body parts that they don't feel confident with, and them encouraging each other, like, no, you are beautiful, this is great. The bass and all that stuff was funny, but at the heart of that scene is just two people trying to find something beyond just that normal friendship, and seeing is there more to explore there, especially from Floyd's perspective. But then Clark, again, well, let me play into this, let me lean into this, see where it goes. But ultimately, it just wasn't who he is, what he wanted to do, and ultimately he decided to go elsewhere. But the scene is just it's the show. It's hard to watch. It's funny. It's emotional. It's all the stuff the show had to offer in this one scene. And I thought both the actors delivered in the performances, and the meat of it is just two people that are just. These are great representations of people that are lost and just don't have a North Star or a foundation that they can rely on to get them out of these type of moments. And when you're lost, you kind of find yourself doing stuff like this, and ultimately you can hurt someone when you're lost, as we see what happens with Floyd.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting, the way they juxtaposed the comedy with the seriousness of it. Yeah. Again, just them dancing in their underpants is just inherently kind of funny. Yeah. And the song that they chose obviously is kind of just like maybe even cliche for those kinds of moments or something.
Set the mood.
Yes, but you're really wondering, especially for Clark, because suddenly then I'm like, is Clark serious? Like, is he really in that moment? And then we realize he's not. Yeah. Maybe he needed to go through that. He needed to process through that, but he discovered, I don't have those feelings for you. Yep. I just don't know how to have a complex friendship with you. Yep. And I just found that so interesting. Especially, again, we've talked a lot about male friendships and bromances, and I think that's a big theme of this show. But, can you have a complex friendship that is still responsible? Because were they being responsible with each other's lives and feelings?
Clark says to Floyd in that scene that he admires him. He almost looks up to him. He almost, in a way, and I think throughout this season, I think secretly Clark wanted to be Floyd. As far as his personality, his acceptance, him, again, kissing modern love to make modern love feel comfortable. And I think Clark wanted to try to do a similar thing for his friend, seeing if I can just disarm my innate personality or my personal sexuality or things that I'm into. Maybe I can suppress that and just be available and be there for someone like Floyd has done. But at the end of the day, going back to him being selfish, I think he couldn't go that far. He couldn't, and not to say that you have to not be who you are to make someone else happy, but Floyd did that throughout the entire season, and we saw where that got him. When you do that too often, you kind of break yourself, you lose your confidence when you pour yourself into more people and don't pour stuff into you and encourage yourself. So we see that complex tug and pull of what happens when someone tries to offer more than what they can provide. And when someone thinks they're going to receive something when they don't, how that can be heartbreaking and crushing.
It's it's getting very philosophical here, but that's how I was feeling about it too. Is just like, should he have known that though? Should he have been more careful with Floyd's feelings, knowing how far Floyd had come, and knowing how important it was to Floyd? Again, should there have been, I keep thinking about therapists, always, therapists, like, this is a place where you should have been in a safer zone, maybe than 4 a.m. You've lied to your wife about where you are. Yes, you guys are, these drugs are dangerous, like things that you should have been more careful with each other's feelings, especially Clark in that moment. I sort of feel like can you approach someone
that's on the edge?
It's on the edge. Yeah. And knowing this might push them over and not have thought it fully through.
I go back to, I think it was last week, he wanted a little bit of danger in his life. And unfortunately, that danger was dangerous. It was a dangerous thing for him to have that kind of that impulses and embracing his impulses and end up, again, resulting on his friend going over the edge.
What did you think about Bateman's acting in this scene? I feel like we don't always see him that emotional, crying.
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with his work as you are, but what did you think about the delivery of their performances?
So I'll be honest. I've been thinking this entire season, and this is no fault on Jason Bateman, but I think David Harbour has been out acting. And I don't say I think he's been given more. David Harbour's been given more than Jason Bateman for most of the season. He's been given more emotional stakes, more empathetic moments. So I feel like he's been kind of more the forefront of this show. And Jason, as any good actor would do, allows the other actors to have moments, to be able to be the lead of a show. So he's taken, in my opinion, a little bit of a seat back and allowed people like Linda Cardellini and, of course, David Harbour to have the moment to shine. But to answer your initial question, I thought Jason definitely landed that moment, the emotional stakes, the emotional breakdown. There have been shows and movies where he's tapped into that, like Ozark, for example. There's moments where he does get very emotional because his family is going to be murdered by the cartel. So there's a lot of emotional stakes involved there. But to see this level of vulnerability from someone that we normally are used to making us laugh, making us happy, to see that. And I've always said that I think comedians are always some of the best drama actors because they have that, behind that smile is a sadness most of the times for people in that industry and people that switch over from comedy to drama or vice versa. But I thought he 100% leaned into the emotional moments in that scene, the vulnerability in that scene, and giving props to David Harbour, too, to receive that moment, allow him to be so emotional. And it was just a great acting on display from both actors, but Jason Bateman definitely delivered.
In fact, he says, "You're safe here."
Right.
Floyd says that to Clark, and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's still going to be okay. We of course know Floyd is dead. But, you think, okay, maybe these two friends can still come through this moment and be all right. The breaking point, of course, is Richard.
Yes.
And Richard seeing it. I kept thinking, why is the door open? Close the
Yeah.
door if you guys are going to be dancing in your
Pull
underpants.
the curtains down.
Like, come on.
Yeah. They were just not careful.
No.
As we just said, yeah.
And again, it kind of revealed a little bit on what Richard actually did or saw. And I just thought that, again, sign language being such an important part of this show, and we were so grateful for our guest last week explaining that to us. And but he thinks it's rock on, is what his
just being like
his father figure is
dismissive
saying.
about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we find out it's something totally different. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the scene, we saw the triggering point, him breaking the window, and we're like, we saw the milk scene, so it's just like an impulse, like these moments of outburst. But it stems from something, and it is him going to his, doing his little sheet with, which again goes back to like these characters think they're doing something good for someone, and it ends up being their downfall, unfortunately. I mean, there's no way he would have known. Well, I will say, and this is kind of a TV little nitpick, why would you have the app pulled up all openly on you're trying to be all secretive and be undercover with you have it just on the next tab on your computer.
And your stepson's going to be using that computer. You'd probably be a little more careful.
It's one of those TV, like, we got to write this in and get to point A to point B. But he finds the app, he reads through it, gets the address, because I was always, how did he know where to go? But,
right.
They answer that question. He has the address there and goes on the bike. Carol's a heavy sleeper, by the way. Like, you can't
On a
throw someone
beanbag.
while- yeah,
I wouldn't be sleeping well in Richard's room like that
Yeah.
after,
Well,
especially
she's-
the hospital. But
yeah,
they're probably tired.
that's what I'm gonna say.
Again, very touching
Hospital,
moments.
exactly.
At the hospital,
Yeah.
and she says, "We can talk about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll worry about this tomorrow."
100%. So I'll give her some grace there. She's very tired. She's working so hard for the family. He drives there, and he looks out the window and sees the moment. And again, putting yourself in the character's shoes, you see your dad with your dad's best friend, and the first thing, like, oh my goodness, like, he's having an affair. This is why they're best friends, because they're intimate with each other. So I can only imagine a 13, 14-year-old thinking in his head, and the moment of probably betrayal. This is someone that's been giving me therapy, life lessons, encouraging me, but now you're doing this behind my mom's back. And of course, we know the history, what happened with the baseball bat. So it's like, oh, well, this has just been fake this whole time. This guy that's been all hippie and all nice and going, he's not good. He's a bad guy. So you can understand where Richard was in that moment. But again, it's all about, as the title alludes to, everyone looks normal from the other side of the street.
Right.
It's always about perception. He perceived this as one thing and not knowing there's a lot more to go with that, including his mom having actually an affair. So there's so much to dive with that moment in general. But he sees it and just thinks that it is, from what he sees, his mom is being cheated on from his dad, who's he thought was someone who's loving and caring, but in his mind, just a fraud or a fat liar, as he called him.
Yeah, exactly. But he doesn't act.
He doesn't.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
It's in fact Floyd that does the final action of downing the rest of the drink.
Yeah.
And I just thought, again, could they have had if they had had a moment where they could have talked, could Floyd have run after him? Could they, have said, this is not what it looks like to you, and we will get through this too.
Yeah.
But and I just, again, thought that the sign language moment of knowing it actually meant I love you.
Yeah.
To me, that read, I was curious what you thought, that he was already having a heart attack. Basically, he was not able to go after Richard.
Yeah, I think that, on top of the fact that I think so at that point in time, his marriage is already, he already knows his marriage is pretty much done at this point. His date online didn't turn out well. The guy told him that he didn't know the reasons, but he can put two and two together that he just wasn't interested in him. So that's another shot at his ego. Then your best friend, who you probably have the most vulnerable experience with in this, in their underwear, dancing. He's thinking he's going to experience something new and maybe something's going to fulfill that void that is missing. That falls apart. And then the icing on the cake is the one person that you love, that you have been putting so much time and effort. The very first scene of this season was them at their little father-son session about being honest and truthful with each other. All this time of putting that energy in him, and the person that you were you're a mentor for, and someone's looking up to you, you break their heart. It's the final thing. All those things build up for him to say it's unfortunate. And we'll talk about how we perceive that message, but he gave up at that point. And just,
do you think he did it absolutely on purpose? Said, I think I'm going to take my own life now?
Yeah, I think so, because last week there was a mention when he was talking to Floyd of like, listen, man, I'm kind of at ends meet. I'm kind of at my last straw. If hopefully this date that he was thinking was going to happen with Tiger, if it goes well, we can start over. I can rejuvenate my life and be in a better spot, but this is the last straw. So I do think, just my interpretation, that I think he intentionally knew what he was going to do, what that was going to do when he drank the rest of that. It was going to end his life. So I do think he purposefully, because we were speculating, was it an accidental thing? But no, I think he, on purpose, took his own life. The whole "I love you" was his final goodbye, and he just accepted that it was just, unfortunately, he couldn't move on anymore.
It's so sad for Richard, though, in that way, where I'm just like, now, and I wonder how we're supposed to take away from that. Richard, has a moment where he's showing off his skills on the park pommel horse then, and you kind of think that maybe Floyd has left him with some, in a better place. He's in a new school. He has more confidence, but we all know that losing any kind of parent figure at that pivotal time in your life is going to be really awful.
For the rest of his life.
And so that's where I was like, Floyd, come on, don't give up, please, for Richard.
Yeah. And that's where I guess the messaging of this finale, or that last point, is, again, going back to characters thinking, I hate to use the word, Floyd finally made a decision on his own without anyone else's input or trying to go over his own emotions to help someone else out in the situation. He finally made the decision on his own, and unfortunately, as we said with Clark, that decision I think will forever haunt. Even with like you just mentioned, the nice moment of him doing the tricks in the park and whatnot, and being able to have the little worksheet on being nice to people and stuff like that. But knowing that his stepdad said, "I loved you," you would think, at least I'll just speak for myself. If I were in Richard's position, I would always think, what if I would have turned around? What if I would? When you hear people that have lost someone due to taking their own life, they always say, I should have answered the phone. I should have stayed over longer. I should have been there for him. So you would imagine that that's something that, again, this is a fictional show, but you would imagine carrying on that's going to stick with Richard for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And I have to be honest, I had the same thought with Clark's family because we see Clark left with absolutely nothing. His billboard has been graffitied, so his career is presumably over, which it would be, I would imagine, even if you were vindicated from a murder charge. But the attention would be what it's going to be. And Emmy, this character, his wife, that we've wondered so much about this whole show, we get nothing more of her except to know she pieced out with those girls, and that was that.
Yeah. So, which is rightfully so. I always, when you see these type of scandals or sensationalized stories, you're always wondering, how's that partner stay there? What is it in that relationship? Is it that they just don't have the strength to leave a relationship? Yeah, she was out. And the actress, I'm sure, this is an HBO show. This is something she could put on her resume. But I do wish there was more with her.
Agreed.
To have that moment of being like, oh, yeah, we knew him. She doesn't play game, but we didn't know anything about her. I would have almost assumed that she would have been the supportive wife and just stayed in the relationship for the fact of appearances and, people, how they perceive marriage, through thick and thin, through, whatever, I'm going to stay there with my partner. But no, she left without a second thought. But that moment of seeing Floyd or Clark on the swing set by himself, and then to think about how they cut it between him being alone by himself and Floyd dying alone by himself. And it goes back to these were just two lonely people that unfortunately took ways of fulfilling that loneliness and it ended up affecting their lives in a way that will forever change them. One obviously lost their life, and the other one their life is now has to start over from scratch, which I would imagine regardless of how popular Clark was, I think it will be pretty hard for him to find his way on camera again, less long than anything in that field of weathermaning again. So 2 lives were destroyed from decisions from these characters,
I mean, that is it right there, is the irony of that. He said he wanted to matter to someone else. Now he matters to no one. Again, these children. I like the hair braiding moment with his daughters. And again, we didn't see much of them, but we know that he had a family and just was not put kind of his own needs ahead of them. Yeah. So it's a bummer that we end with that. What are we supposed to take away from it then? Are we supposed to learn something from every show? Is that how you look at it?
Right.
Is there a moral to every story?
I think one of the first things that came to mind while watching this finale, and especially how bleak it was a show on Netflix probably a decade ago called 13 Reasons Why. Very popular show based on a book that circled around a similar subject matter, but for a teenage perspective about kids being bullied and all the stuff that comes with that. And unfortunately, the main character took their life and on camera. And they altered that scene because it was so kind of triggering for people in that situation. So, and that was a show that kind of just showed you what happens when you don't have community, when you don't have people to lean on and to help you through these tough moments, especially when you're a teenager or even when you're an adult. And I kind of I put that framing and those messaging on this show. What happens when a normal suburban lifestyle family that you think, again, looking on the other side of the street, that everything is normal, but deep down there's so much deep-rooted depression, loneliness, seeking acceptance, seeking some type of connection, and what happens when you don't have that available to you, where it can lead. And from Clark's perspective, lose everything, lost his whole life, his career, and then Floyd lost his life. So I think it's one of those situations where, and again, it's open to interpretation, but I think it's one of those things where if you do, as cliche and boring as the answer may be, when you need help, try to find someone, try to, seek out a community, seek out a therapist, because when you do have those dark moments, it is nice to have that to lean on and to have those resources to kind of use in those dark moments. And the irony of all this is there was two lonely people that had people there, but again, they just wanted more. So yeah, it's tough to see how a lot of people will take in the ending, because I can see the other side of that as being like, is the message just, if things don't work out, just end your life, just give up?
Yeah, or is
How
it
do you
just the
feel about it?
futility of things?
Yeah.
No matter what you try, no matter how hard you might try to be
yeah.
a good person, like it just life is going to get in the way sometimes, and to be human is so hard, and not only that, but our actions do have consequences. So to think those through. But what do you think is going to be the overall reaction to the show itself? Again, a lot of people I think have been now starting to really reel on the mystery part.
Yeah.
Are they gonna be okay with how this ended?
So that's the thing about murder mysteries. I think of The White Lotus. I think of Only Murders in the Building. I think of all the many, Mayor of Easttown. There's so many great shows that have, the central, the hook, the elevator pitch is there's a murder and we got to figure it out. And then we talked about this for weeks, and I always felt that this was going to be one of those situations that the destination was fun, wacky, weird, entertaining. But then when you arrive to destination, you might not get what you were hoping for.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see how people feel, because I do think, I hope I'm wrong, but I do think people will be disappointed by the end result of how things wrapped up and how it was, I don't want to say cut and dry, but it was just he took his own life. There was no secret, the husband came in, Carol, it wasn't all the stuff that we've been kind of speculating about. So I do think there will be a disappointment from the end result of what happened to Floyd. But then I think when you, as the conversation we just had, and all the different layers and complexities of relationships and, topics of depression, midlife crisis, had not been fulfilled, and I think there's a lot more to lean on and to leave you thinking about. And you can, I don't want to say forgive, but I think you could be more lenient on not being completely satisfied with how Floyd died, and appreciate kind of the nuances and the storytelling and the moments we laughed. And the moments things got cringy and awkward, and seeing two phenomenal, great actors and Linda Cardellini and this ensemble cast coming together to bring quite a unique show that, this is not it's kind of unorthodox in its storytelling and how it told its story. So I would hope that there is some grace from the audience to be like, oh man, this finale didn't really stick to landing, but I was able to take away so much other things that it was able to provide me with. So
I do wonder if Stephen Conrad wanted us to feel uncomfortable at the end. It was not meant to be satisfying.
Right, happy ending.
Exactly.
And,
Yes, not tied with a bow.
Yeah.
Do you think that it could be award in the awards conversation? Will it stand the test of time? Is it rewatchable for people?
Yeah.
Even with White Lotus, is it possible this will have life after this limited series?
Great question. There have been multiple examples of the White Lotus was a one and done, but it was so successful that they were like, we can't leave money on the table. And also, I think the creator, Mike White, had more stories to tell if the opportunity was presented to itself. But that was brought on to another season. Big Little Lies was supposed to be a one and done, but they did another season. Apparently doing another one. Shogun is another show, very popular, that was based on one book, but they're literally making a whole new story because it was just that popular and an award. So, I mean, if this show does, I think we've talked about the viewership. You don't feel like this is like a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon type of viewership. It doesn't have that type of buzz around it. But I do think this is a show that will have a long-lasting. I think people will discover it as kind of the days and weeks go by, because I think there will be a conversation about the divisiveness of this ending, and people might say, "Oh, yeah, I've been waiting to see what this show's about." And some people do wait till something's just over to binge it all, because we live in a very bingeable society. Right. So I think some people will go back and watch it. And to answer your question about potential awards, I mean, David Harbour's an Emmy. He's in the Emmy conversation with Stranger Things for the past decade, so I think that he's very in that circle. Jason Bateman, the same thing with Ozark. So I think there can be some awards considerations for probably not a drama, but they'll probably lean into like the comedy category, like Hacks, if you guys ever watch Hacks, so which is also a pretty serious show but has comedy. So I can see some awards coming, and if the awards are won, there's enough demand. HBO want Steve to come with another season 2, I can see him doing like an anthology series and being like, like we kind of jokingly said off camera, DTF, Arkansas, DTF, or some crazy place, and to explore more of these conversations about what Homer and Plum were talking about like, you don't know what someone's into. You don't know what people are doing behind their closed doors. You don't know how people handle certain things. So I can 100% see this being another season of just another couple, another family, another situation, exploring who these people are.
Yeah, I was especially grateful for our detectives in the end of the show. I feel like they were a little bit of that reprieve, and they bonded. And, we found out Homer is so normal, it's weird. But I just thought that was a nice wrap up. We started this podcast, obviously, because we are St. Louisans. Yes. We wanted to get down to the facts here on this show, which I think we have. Would totally encourage people to go back and watch our other episodes with some of these great guests that we have had.
Yeah.
But I know that St. Louisans, many of them, the feedback I heard was that they were frustrated. It wasn't more St. Louis. We talked to Stephen Conrad about that in our second episode of this podcast, where he apologized that it wasn't shot in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But what do you think? I mean, a show like this, for you as a St. Louisan too, is it a good thing that we were even just discussed and talked about? What will this do for St. Louis moving forward?
So I have always been the mindset since the beginning of like any exposure, and I know some people says like the representation of St. Louis is kind of, it's unfortunate that it wasn't shot here, and there's certain things like the Jamba Juice and not being available in St. Louis and little things like that, and I can understand that, but I'm always in the mindset of like, when you have a show that puts a title of your town, your city in there, and to have a show on HBO with these great actors, that is just great exposure, and it's just a way of hopefully open up the conversation about potentially, as we talked about with the St. Louis, the Office conversation that we have to interview, that these will open up the doors to have more productions coming to St. Louis, to bring that authenticity that this show unfortunately didn't offer to a lot of audience members. So I do think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where any exposure is better than no exposure. So I hope that this is just opening the door for more shows, movies, stories to come to St. Louis and to bring to the forefront. So I do think this at the end of the day will be a good thing for St. Louis.
Come visit us.
Yes.
We do have a beautiful arch. We've got a great scene. We don't have our own specific dating app that I'm aware of. Not on the dating scene, but we have lots of wonderful other things. A great zoo, amazing museums, restaurants, scenes of all other kinds. 100%. So come check out St. Louis. It's a fun place. In fact, that brings me to a little special treat that I have for you, Elliot, as a thank you for being the co-host to this show. This is a VLT sandwich.
Nice.
Because we don't eat bacon here.
Yeah.
You don't eat bacon, right?
Correct.
But I wanted to have a sandwich where we would shake the bacon off each other's sandwich. I really am so grateful that you have been my partner through this experience. Thank you for doing this with us.
Well, I feel like we're kind of our own version of Floyd and Clark, but more mentally sound.
Yes.
And very
Homer
much.
and Plum, too. I'll take that.
Yes. So the same thing. I can't thank you and your team enough for the last 7 weeks. This has been a crazy, awesome, fun experience. As you mentioned, the guests we've had on, I always love learning new things, and there was so much learned over the last 7 weeks. So for me to you, thank you for having me as your co-host. This has been an incredible experience, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. And of course, your work continues. You're going to be reviewing. This was a little mini sabbatical. I'll get back to investigative reporting now, but you'll be reviewing shows and movies. So I hope people come and find you.
I hope so as well, yes. For more discussions about shows like this, whether it's on HBO, Amazon, whatever the case may be, movies, all that stuff, you can find me on YouTube at Movie Files, Instagram, TikTok, X, and all the wonderful sites out there. I will be available to have these conversations with you all.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This is from J&B Wellness, by the way, which is
nice.
In a town that's our version of Twyla. I guess the suburbs of St. Louis. We have a vegan BLT.
Nice.
So, all right, Elliot, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you out there for watching as well. It's been a ride. It's been a journey, but it's been a fun one.
It has.